Um, I have a just observation, and I just can't. Mari Perron said that when you recognize truth, tears may come, and I can't stop crying. I thank you so much because I hear truth, and you are expressing reality, and you're the epitome for me of why I came. You're voicing for me, and I thank you with all my heart. And Dr. David Hawkins has a book, Letting Go. It's his last book. He's passed on, but it epitomizes everything he taught. And letting go is surrender, and I hear that in Corinne when you acceptance, surrender, and I thank you so much because when we open to what is and let go, then trust in your head and mind.
Good idea. Good idea.
I was saying Dr. David Hawkins, his last book, Letting Go, and I'm listening to it. I have my audio and also, and it epitomizes everything he taught. I think it puts it all together. The thing is, it's the surrender, and it's the acceptance. It's huge acceptance and surrender, and that you epitomized for me in your share. Because when we let go, truth comes forward. The real, and that's forgiveness too. What is real, and everything is real. So, thank you, and Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, you just voiced, you made it so clear. What this course is about, and it just hit so deeply. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to highlight that those moments of surrender, the peace that comes forward, the more we open up to who it is that we really are, the thought always comes to me, why did I ever defend against this? Why did I ever defend against this? And I still fluctuate. I still have, sometimes one foot in Holy Spirit's camp and one foot in the ego's camp, and I go back and forth. And those moments of returning to right-mindedness are those moments of thinking, just why did I defend against this? And that's where, what is that wavering? But the part of me that still thinks that there's something here, that there's some value, that I love being Corinne. There's moments, waking up, I wake up every morning thinking that I'm Corinne. And if I can own that there's part of me that actually likes being separate, there it is. I'm looking at that with the Holy Spirit too. I'm taking extreme responsibility for the part of my mind that didn't just turn away from God back. You know how the Course says we had that tiny mad idea and turned her back on God, and there was that guilt, that fear that came in. We didn't just do that once. We're doing that every moment. And that's why we have this choice in the moment to drop into being and choose for Holy Spirit, for God, letting Holy Spirit choose for God for us. That we drop all of that guilt and fear. There's nothing to be undone, really. It's all here already. There's only love. There's only love.
I love what you were sharing, because the acceptance part is also the acceptance of whatever is showing up, including our behaviors. For such a long time with the Course, I was so caught up on what the behavior needed to be. In my movie, I really sought out to who the person is that knew truth, and once I found that person, then I was going to mirror that person and do what that person does. And so, what dawns on the mind is God's not withholding anything, regardless of what's being done or what we're doing, because whatever's being done or what's doing is still arising in innocence. If everything is God's will, the complete acceptance of God's will is really the dissolving of guilt altogether, because if everything is God's will, then I'm not responsible, guilty for anything, nor are other people. I can't blame somebody if everything's God's will. Now people then think, well then does it mean that the loss of the job or the war is God's will? No. God's will is this definitionless awareness. Everything that's put on top of it is the voice for the ego. And even when our mind goes into a place of the narrative, which it sometimes does, that too is to be forgiven in the sense that it can be watched without judgment and allowed, rather than the ego's thought system coming in from the back door to say, oh, Craig, you're too spiritual to be thinking about that, or you're not supposed to have those thoughts, or you're not supposed to like money, or you're not supposed to, go back to work. I made a movie about leaving work and following inspiration, and that was part of my curriculum. And it was beautiful because what it allowed to happen, or what unfolded, was I was put in a position where stepping into my vulnerability showed me my invulnerability. And that was a necessary part of my curriculum. Here I am, a year and a half later, and I'm thinking, wow, it'd be kind of fun to go back to work, taking this time off and collaborating with others. It'd be nice to have money coming in too. Now, I don't know if I'll go back to work. I have no clue how that will unfold, what it will be. But the fun part is being able to look at it and go into this experience with completely different eyes and no dependency on work or career or what it needs to be or even where it needs to be. Yes, I'm actually thinking about leaving Hawaii. That doesn't mean that's going to happen. It's simply the thoughts. The truth is I'm not in control. Everything is God's will. So I hang on to no one thought, but I allow the thoughts. Whereas when we're caught up or invested in the person or the identity, when the thoughts arise, we're quick to either grab onto a thought or resist the thought, and now I'm suffering. Because now I can make a wrong decision and I can make a right decision, which both are impossible. Nothing is to our blame or credit. Yes?
You were able to you won't go that far, but it's okay. Yeah.
But you were able in a nice gentle way at times to help facilitate the shift from the feeling of being somebody sitting in a chair and then moving into this new self, which is the oneness. And there were just little words that sometimes like acceptance or it'd be different things, but it was always about a gentleness. But it created a heartfelt wish to just freely move into oneness from this separated experience that we're all kind of partaking in to some degree. We sit here, and oneness is our little self. So if you could say more about that, and maybe more little hints now and then would kind of shift us a little bit. I don't. It's kind of one of those things where you try to reach it for it, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like, you made me think of, you ever see those Chinese handcuffs where you put, and you try to pull and it stays stuck? So it's exactly what you say. You try to grab it and it shifts. Well, truth is whole, truth is one, Holy Spirit is whole, that's everything. So if a part of everything, so part has already been defined as something separate from the whole, if a part is trying to grab everything, it can't. It has to dissolve to embody everything. So that is why we can't understand or comprehend truth, because in order to embody truth and be aware of it, let's just say that, to be aware, because the truth is we were whole, we're complete, we don't have to do anything, we're perfect. The question is, are we aware of it? So to become aware of it, it really is as simple as an acceptance of it, or an acceptance of God, or an acceptance of wholeness, which simply means accepting life as it is right in this moment, just being here. But the experience of separation is going to, it happens. It appears and dissolves. In my experience, everybody has a different experience, it seems. But it's not a problem, but what seems to happen in the mind is we lose awareness of our wholeness only because we've been embodied by wholeness. So when we're experiencing joy, unbelievable joy, we don't take a moment to say, I'm experiencing joy, because in that moment that we try to define what's happening, we've already separated. We went from embodying something to now trying to make something out of everything. We're perceiving it. And that's okay. That's a natural process. But that's how that kind of seems to fluctuate in our experience. I imagine, the Course talks about stabilizing perception. It is my feeling, or my belief, or my experience, that what the Course is really saying is stabilizing an awareness of the wholeness, awareness of this presence that is undeniable in every one of our experience. But as we all know, the mind is doing what it does. Sometimes attention is drawn into a circumstance, situation. I'm walking down the hall, I see all these Trump people, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So there's a moment of that. But as perception becomes stabilized, then that rises and then that's left behind. There isn't, now it's being used for the purpose of peace. So there's a shift in the way it's being used. And I think that's just an ongoing process that just happens by virtue of this experience of awakening.
I just had one quote came from the Course just then about, as you were talking, it said a beautiful line that says it's not a breaking out, but a gentle melting.
It's like ice
Not breaking out, but a gentle melting in. He shared a quote from the Course that it's not a breaking out, but a gentle melting in. I just wanted to speak, just to add to what Craig shared and highlight the word that you said of gentleness that just came up again now. The Course is extremely gentle. Nothing is taken away. There is no sacrifice. The Course meets us where we're at in a way that we need to hear it and in a way that we're ready for. Early on in my study of the Course, I used to be afraid that if I aced the Course, that I was going to be whisked away. Boom, I was going to be here anymore. And we're laughing, and wonder if there's some mutual recognition there. But the thing is that when I'm not ready to be Corinne anymore, when I'm really ready to drop this completely, I'm going to be ready for it. Nothing, again, is going to be taken away. This is extremely, extremely gentle. So thank you for that word. I saw some hands. I first saw a hand over here, and then I see a hand over there. Does anybody over here want to?
I was just, my experience with the, when those thoughts arise.
Microphone.
I can talk about my experience with the, when I'm aware of the wholeness, and those thoughts arise, and I don't have to jump into them. I can watch them arise and let them dissolve or go away, And is that what you were talking about? I mean, it's basically.
Yeah, the Course, there's even a Course quote that I probably will mess up, but it says something like, you don't have, it's not that you don't have to have pure thoughts, it's that there are none that you attach to or believe in. Thank you, that you would keep. So,
That I'm bad for having them or anything.
Exactly. Everything arises in innocence. Everything. You can't kill innocence, you can't harm innocence, but from the perspective of limitation where innocence can be harmed, then there's fear and we suffer.
And going back to that quote, there's no, I'm not saying the quote directly, but what the Course is saying, it's not that you're going to stop having judgmental or negative thoughts, it's that we have none that we would keep. Going back to the piece of what I was saying about letting Holy Spirit do its job. I'm a trained counselor, and one of the theories that we learn about is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm not knocking. It serves a place for, again, where we might be at on our journey. But the Course isn't teaching us to change our thoughts. The Course is teaching us to not keep them, to recognize them, let them be, and hand them right over to Holy Spirit. So just letting them go by. Do you mind taking the mic?
I'd write down if I forget. I'm just wondering what the difference is between hearing the Holy Spirit's voice, your higher self voice, and Jen's line. What's the difference? Because I hear a voice all the time, and I don't know if it's my higher self, it's Holy Spirit, or it's just Jen's voice. I'm so confused. I just know there's voices, there's not. So I'm like, oh, which way am I going? I'm spinning. I'm like, stop. Where's it coming from? Who might I listen to?
Thank you for that question. I think that's a very common, something we all wonder is what does the voice of the Holy Spirit sound like? And that higher self, that higher mind, that is the Holy Spirit. That's what I would interpret it as. That's what I like to think of it as. It's going to be different for all of us in terms of how we hear Holy Spirit. For me, it's quiet. It's still. It's something that I experience in my core. This is really funny and really silly, but this is something that I was doing for quite some time. Everybody know how to play solitaire? With cards? Try playing solitaire with Holy Spirit. The purpose is not to win. That I have to be very clear about that. The purpose is not to win. But the purpose is to notice that when you see your next move, it might be like a knee-jerk reaction. That's probably Corinne's voice. It's like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to move next? Before I have that impulse to move, I pause. So I notice the impulse, and then I pause. And I was noticing for myself that there would be this lightness, this feeling about what to do next, which maybe was the same thing as my initial knee-jerk reaction, or maybe it was something different. And again, the goal wasn't to win. The goal was to listen, to practice listening. So that's just a little fun thing that you can experiment with in terms of, what is it that you're listening to? But I think how we hear Holy Spirit is different for all of us. John Mark Stroud from onewhowakes.org, I don't think he's here right now, but he's at this conference. He has a great meditation for asking Holy Spirit to direct your attention to a place in your body where you can most easily hear Holy Spirit. We tend to really dismiss the body as Course students, and yet giving the body to Holy Spirit, we're repurposing it now. It's having a new purpose. So if we're saying, Holy Spirit, show me where I can best hear you in my own body, ask that question a few times and see where your attention is directed to and where it is that you hear. Again, for me, it's quiet, it's still, and it's loving. Yes? The Course says that the ego always speaks first. Yes, so pausing. Yeah, absolutely. That is a good piece of information.
First and loudest.
First and loudest. Yeah, it is loud.
My first reaction was to say, ask it, and if it answers, that's not it.
Right. Ask it, and if it answers, it's not it. Do you want to add anything before we move on to another question?
No, I think that's what
Yeah.
you said.
I just want to share something. I'm sure that Corinne will have to elaborate on what I'm going to say, but we'll see. I was born and raised in the Roman Catholic Church, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But now I have pretty well rejected most of the dogmas and everything that they say, for instance, about Jesus. Jesus now is my best brother. He's no more God than I am, because the truth is that was a big revelation for me. We are all gods. And this is so wonderful once you realize that, and when you see God in everybody that you see around you. And this brings me to my question here. How many people in this audience believe that when you're sick, you pray God to be healed? How many believe that works? That's very good. It's amazing the number of people that do pray God to get healed. What they don't realize is that God does not know illness. So how can He do anything about it? He doesn't know it. Illness is your own creation. So that goes back to the theme of this weekend. Change your mind, and you get healed.
Thank you so much. I'll just highlight what you said. That's been a practice of mine, is working from that top-down idea. Whatever the problem is that seems to show up in perception, whatever the issue is, God doesn't know this. You said it, God does not know sickness. God does not know suffering. God doesn't know any of these things, and so they can't be real. And can we really feel into that? Can we really own that and embody that? Thank God.
Yeah, that's beautiful because there's always a tendency through conditioning to want to pray for the perception to be different, something to change, and that's okay. We've all done it, and perhaps still do it. That's fine too. But the beauty of what you shared is the recognition that it's never ever about the form, and this is kind of. It's a little bit of a mind bender because many of us are drawn to the Course because we want to heal a physical ailment, and we want to heal, emotional situation, and healing is our right. But we tend to think of it in terms of manipulating the form. But really, the healing that we're aiming for is really the knowing of who we are. It is so simple because in the knowing of who we are, whatever the perception is, it doesn't matter. I couldn't put my head around how certain, what I perceived as enlightened masters, could die of a disease. Like, how could, Nisargadatta, Sri Nisargadatta, die of cancer and smoke and be enlightened? And if you ever watched him, he sounds like a very angry fellow. I just couldn't wrap my hand, get the wisdom that was pouring out. And then it dawned on me, I was the one seeing sickness in him. I was the one saying he died of cancer because my perception of him was shrunk down to the limitation of his body. That's not who he was. So the liberation from any ailment is the liberation from the belief that we are limited by the body, that we are the body. That is the problem, is that we think we're the body, not the ailment. And so when we understand that, then we recognize that we can allow the ailment to be there, and incidentally, the mind is so powerful that in some cases, the ailment can disappear, and that's welcome too. But my happiness is not dependent upon the ailment. There are many people who have come to know themselves and still have, Ken Wapnick. His body was laid down and the body had cancer, but who he was didn't have cancer. There's no concern because there's the scope of perception has been widened so much that there is no longer the sense of limitation to the body. And the truth is the body will pass on. The body's going to go away. We know this. But who we are is eternal. And that eternity, again, can be recognized through the portal of right now. Because that's all we ever really know is this, is now. So thank you for sharing that. Beautiful reminder. It releases expectation of what needs to happen, and we're free.
I want to make a comment. I don't need to buy, but I can remember the first books I read was that book, and that kind of got me into. Then I found Course, but that part about God doesn't know anything about this, it was like, oh my God, that's the good news. That's the news I heard. Because then, not that I understood everything, but it made more sense.
Yeah. Only love is real.
Just on your topic of the body, I sat down to meditate this morning or kneel, and I noticed a pain in my knee. And I instantly had the thought, this is a blessing. And the reason I thought that was because the experience of pain was showing me something in me that I was not ready to heal, I was not ready to release. It was an opportunity for the shift you've been so eloquently describing this morning. So just wanted to add that to the thought.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
questions?
I have lots of questions. So I was raised in the church very strongly, and I was taught we're all sinners, 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 sinners. How do you let that go? Especially when your whole family, like, pounds it into you. I'm in a holistic healing center, so I'm the oddball in the family, so even everything I do, I still feel I'm a sinner, even sitting in the room right now. So how do I let that go? In my head, I'm like, no, I'm not a sinner, because God's in love. But then everything comes back down. I don't know how to change that. Any suggestions?
Thank you. So, as you know, I'm sure, of course, Miracle teaches that there is no sin. Sin is a mistake, or if we even, there is no sin, but mistakes are just how we can think about errors, which again are just on the level for not in truth. Each time that you notice that feeling of guilt come up, let's look at this as a positive thing, because the Course is teaching that we carry unconscious fear and guilt right now for our belief that we've separated from God. That there's part of mine that's holding this fear and guilt. And when it comes to the surface, that's a beautiful opportunity to look at it with Holy Spirit and say, I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to see this differently. So let's reframe the fact that this was a teaching, and we can look at this now as a positive because the guilt is right on the surface. Look up at the Holy Spirit. It's right there. It's right there. And seeing if do you feel that, if I can just ask you a direct question, do you have that willingness to?
Yes, I'm willing to let it go, let it go, give it over to God. It's in there. Let it go, I'm afraid to give it over, like
I'll repeat what she just said. She said that. Sure, thank you. I'll just repeat what she said, and that was just that she has willingness to hand it over, and has done so and is continuing to do so. And that's, I don't know if that little reframe helps with just seeing it then as, you're able to touch it maybe more clearly than some of us. And again, continuing to be willing to look at that with Holy Spirit. Craig, do you have anything to add?
I remember once I went through an experience where my brother and I didn't get along. We didn't get along most of my life. But it hit a point where he said, "You're dead to me," and we ended up not talking and so forth. And so one of the things that I realized that in every one of these situations is the problem is not necessarily that he said that I'm dead to him. Or in this case, the problem is not that our family thinks that we're sinners, but it's a resistance to what we think that means. So in other words, am I willing to be the sinner? And in that willingness to be the sinner is really to die from the ego perspective. That's what it is. Because the sinner, my thought is, I'm not the bad brother. I'm not I'm not those things. So, and there's a resistance to what's happening. You know what? Let me be I'm that awful person. Okay. And what that does is, and this is not to indulge that experience. So it's not like, I'm the awful brother. It's like, with purpose being my goal and peace, it's going into the experience simply to witness without judgment, which is forgive. Because as long as I resist that, then it stays in my consciousness as unhealed. Whereas once I step into the willingness, I'll be the sinner. I can become witness to my invulnerability and recognize that's it. There's nothing wrong, and I can bear myself naked without any shame in it. And now I'm free because it doesn't matter. But as long as I resist it, and this came clear to me when I started to think about secrets. When we hold a secret, I don't want, so-and-so to know that I stole this, or I don't want so-and-so to know that I had sex with this person, I don't want it was, when I looked at the secret, it was always a need to protect my identity, who I thought I was. And the fear or the resistance was to feel the shame, or to feel the betrayal, have betrayed someone, to resist that. So I protect the secret. But what happens is the protecting of that secret creates an experience of separation where there is no communication with others. People we keep the secrets from, and so forth. And so the willingness to be shameful and to allow it, and that's really what I think a lot of the course is about, is not having the private thoughts. We're afraid, we don't want to be judged. But what if we showed up authentically in every situation to allow, all of a sudden we just become witness to our invulnerability. It's scary at first, but for me, in my experience, through the practice of that, of just being, and not only do I recognize my innocence, but now I recognize the innocence in others who've stolen, who've slept around, who've made decisions that are right. And so that is really, and that is really also why when we forgive others for being the sinners, we are also forgiven. So it's really stepping into the fire and walking the hot coals to recognize that you can't get burned.
And if I can just also add, you asked that question before about how do I listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit versus your own voice. That voice that's saying that you're guilty, that you're a sinner, that's not your voice. That is not you, the capital Y you, the capital S self you. That is not the Holy Spirit's voice. That is just the ego voice trying to keep us limited. And if your family is saying the same thing, or anybody in the church, wherever it is, I'm speaking to the capital S self, that's not their voice either. Meaning, to your point, we can start to see the truth of the Christ in everyone, and the words that are being spoken with, saying that sin is there, that's not the true voice. That is not the true voice. It is not your capital Y, not your voice.
Because that higher voice in myself doesn't agree with us.
Right. And so listen to that higher voice. Listen to that higher voice. There it is.
Well, it's loud. So can you talk to that conflict within self that hears the two voices and believes?
Talking to the conflict that within self that believes, that again, whatever that conflict may be, whatever that conflict is that's stirring within, to me, that's always an opportunity to look at that conflict, look at that resistance with the Holy Spirit. So a few other hands. Actually, up here.
I would be very brief, but we talked about sin, and I think it's always good to know what are we talking about. So, what is sin? I totally agree. None of us here in the room are sinners, but unfortunately, at least I do commit sins. What is a sin? I commit a sin anytime I act separated from God. And it's as simple as that. And that goes right back to the original sin. It's so simple as that. We have free will. So we don't have to listen to God. That's our privilege. But every time we separate ourselves from God, we commit a sin. But still, that doesn't make us a sinner.
And that's just a mistake, not a permanent thing. I saw a hand,
Yes, Fred, I think what you said is really given to everybody. When you said you allow yourself to be what you are and you allow, it gives us a gift.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. In my movie, Jacob Glass talks about, there's this belief somewhere that believes that we're awful. There's a belief that somehow there's this unconscious belief that we're awful, and all we really want to do is just be free. And that belief somehow, if it's not investigated, creates an experience of finding witness to that. So it shows up in perception. But to be free is that's all there is. It's just to Freeze. That's it. We have 3 hands up. We'll start in front and we'll work our way back.
I'm on this path of reading meditation.
It doesn't reach that far, we're sorry.
I'm trying to get home to my house to do the, meditations and the lessons. It becomes like I thought it would be a rush home. And start to do the practice. And then I noticed that underneath is oftentimes this feeling of unrest. And it's this unrest, and it makes me angry because I'm wanting so much to have this peace and experience this peace, but there's always this unrest that is like, it's relentless. And what's the deal?
So the question is, what's the deal with the
It seems to not let me completely
unrest?
be peaceful where I'm at.
The unrest, so the question was, what's the deal with the unrest that seems to be there, underneath the surface? I know that unrest well. Because in my experience, that unrest to me is subtle anxiety. It's not necessarily attached to anything, right? Anything specific. To me, that is, the Course says that beneath the fear, what we're really afraid of is love. We're afraid of God. And it's because, again, the part of the self that likes being the separate self. So beneath that unrest is love. And that unrest is just another ego ploy to keep us from going deeper, to keep us from really connecting with love. So that layer of unrest is what I don't turn away from anymore. When it comes to the surface for me, when I become aware of it, I will sit with it. That, to me, I often sense it the most early morning when I first get up in bed. I'll sense sometimes this undercurrent. And rather than just getting up and distracting myself from it, now I will sit with it with spirit and say, I'm going to look at this with you. Because I don't have to fix it myself. So, thank you. Yes, if you're willing to come speak in the mic, that would be great. Thank you.
Dr. Michael Rice, in his book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, says that a sin is actually an archery term from Aramaic, that back when they were shooting arrows at the bullseye, if you miss the bullseye, that was the sin. It's like in tennis, you have love as a tennis term. Well, that was an archery term. All it really means is you get a chance to do it over.
Awesome.
Thank
you. We have only a few minutes left. Would you be willing to step up here for the mic, or can you project?
Well, one of the things that brings me
The room has spoken. Thank you.
Definitely out of my comfort zone.
Thank you.
One of the things that gives me comfort is knowing that the Course in Miracles says that along with every conflict or problem, underneath it is the miracle, just waiting to happen. And there's no time between the miracle and the conflict. I had a very difficult morning. I had forgot to mail my property taxes, and they have to be postmarked by tomorrow. And I didn't know if I would have a grace day on the 11th, but so I took a taxi this morning to the post office to make sure I could get it mailed today, which is the 9th. And I'm like thinking, okay, so what's the miracle behind this problem or conflict? And I didn't see it at the time. And then afterwards, reflecting back, I realized it was when I was trying to decide how much to tip the cab driver. And I thought, well, gee, what's customary? I haven't taken a cab in probably 25 years. Is that like 10%, 15%, 20%? I didn't know, right? And I asked him, and he didn't speak English very well, so he didn't tell me. And so I thought, there was my choice to act out of lack of abundance, or to see the cab driver as my brother, someone who maybe might need a couple of extra dollars, and to act out of abundance, and to, see if I've grown into that awareness that this is my brother, this is me, and he might be really happy to get a 20% tip instead of a 10% tip. So for me, that was the miracle, the awareness of the fact that to be able to operate out of love and abundance rather than lack and fear.
We are actually at time. So before we leave, we just have a few closing words to share. Thank you for doing this work, because your willingness to allow healing in your own mind is helping me. My work is helping you. It's helping. There's only one mind. We're all doing this for each other. So thank you. Craig and I have some presents for you if you're interested. Craig has some bracelets that say love or fear. I made some bookmarks with a quote from the original edition of the course that says, "Mental health is inner peace." Very meaningful to me, as you know. And I also have, I made some magnets. There's a prayer from the course that says, "Take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me." It goes on. It's a very powerful prayer, but it's a reminder that if I've seen something that I am judging as upsetting, whatever it may be, if I'm looking at something out there, take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me. So feel free to come get a magnet if you want one, stick it on your fridge, whatever it will help you remember. And we thank you so much.